Hello and welcome to the Travelling Through podcast. To those of you listening in for the first time, I am Emma, your podcast host, and each week I'm out and about chatting to Londoners and those who love, live and work in this big and glorious city. It is also an excuse for me to reconnect with many of those who had a connection to my bookshop, which sadly closed in June 2019. This week, my guest is Gerry King. He writes autobiographical fiction, commonly referred to as autofiction. He is the author of Lubin Tales, Smoke and Other Tales, and more recently, Come Back to Me, Then Go Away. Gerry's early years were dominated by drink and drugs, before he found an escape route from that world through fate, poetry, art and writing. He said, "If you're going to change, there's got to be some honesty." This is Gerry King's story about London, the world and life. Hello everyone, I'm back with another episode of the Travelling Through podcast, and today I am I've met up with Gerry King at Liverpool Street Station. It's a bit of a windy day, isn't it, Gerry?
It is, and I am here.
You are
You
here.
might not be able to see me, but I can assure you I'm here.
And we're standing in front of the statue, the Kinder statue.
It's the Kinder Transport statue, which commemorates the Jewish children that came from Germany. I think it was 1938 to 1939. I'm not sure on the figures. 12,000. It could be well in excess of that, but I think that's the figure, 12,000.
That's a huge amount of people, isn't it?
Yeah, not enough though, was it?
No, that's true. They then went all round the UK and were taken in by families during the war. And this statue commemorates the children themselves.
It's got the main German rail hubs around the other side of it.
Oh, yes.
Which is, obviously like Berlin, Leipzig, Hamburg, but also there's Prague and Vienna, Austria.
Yes.
And looking at it, you can see it. Two, I would say, young teenage girls.
Yes.
And a small girl holding a teddy bear sitting on a suitcase. There's a violin case. I mean, I've forgotten more than I remember. Oh, and there's a
two young boys as well, one wearing a little cap with 415s. They're all numbered. They've all got numbers rather than names, it seems. But I imagine the name.
Yeah, I can't think of anything more terrible to be sort of in a strange country with nobody, not knowing anyone either, being picked up. But the reason that I think this is so relevant to what we're doing today is that you asked me, one of the questions was, how did you come up with the name Lubin Publishing? Yes,
which is the name of the publishing company. That
it was the publishing company that I'd come up with the name back in like the mid-2000s, and then Louise, my partner, we started a publishing company, Zero Lubin Publishing, but there was a sort of a nod to, I don't know if you remember the comedian Zero Mostel.
I have to say I don't.
Right. He was in a film with, I think it was Gene Wilder, called The Producers.
Okay.
He was he happened to be a Jewish comedian, and he would have been of like Ashkenazi descent, which is, I think, Larry David of Curb Your Enthusiasm. There seems to be this rich seam of humour that just happens to run through these certain people.
Yes.
And Lubin was actually Lublin, and I think it was part of Poland. It was devastated in the Second World War. So I don't know how I sort of put those two together, but that's how it's Zero Lubin. It just sounded pretty good.
Yes.
I just liked it.
Yeah,
but that's really what it's about. It was there's that image, I've got it now, of Zero Mostel. If you check him out, I don't think you could.
I looked up Lubin on Google.
I know,
as one
I found
does.
that interesting.
Yes,
what the
heart of a man or the heart of the sea, and I thought, oh wow, is it because your books are coming from the heart?
I'd like to say, that's the case, but it's not true.
But still, the story that you have is equally fascinating, and The Producers is the name of the film.
The Producers is the name of the film, and it's an excellent. If you haven't seen it, you're lucky. It's like discovering With Nail and I. If you've never seen With Nail and I,
which I have, and I love it.
This is it. The Producers. It's so funny. I mean, it's and the original one.
Yes.
Don't go for the remakes. They never get. Tell me a remake that's ever been better than the original.
I know none.
I can't even think of one. I
believe the new Dune film that's just come out is very good as as a remake. But,
yeah, but
I'm
on
not a Dune fan,
exactly,
so I have no idea.
On a
if it is
level
or
of Dunism,
yes.
you know what I mean? Is it any good?
Yes, yes.
Or is it just another, what would you call it? It's basically a test of patience and tolerance over a period of 3 hours. I mean, I don't know. It's not Blade Runner. It's not that. I mean, that's the sort of science fiction that I like, which is, I think, very prescient.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
For
That's.
sure.
I do refer to Blade Runner quite a lot in the writing.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I do.
Well, Jerry, as it's a bit of a windy day and we did want to
Okay,
walk
let's
and talk,
move.
let's move. And we're moving away from Liverpool Street Station.
Should we go
and
this way?
And this is your neighbourhood. This is
It
your
is.
London neighbourhood.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
I'm 10 minutes from home.
But were you born around this neighbourhood? Or
No,
were
I was
you...
born south of the river.
Oh, were you?
Yeah,
So
I was actually born in St Thomas's Hospital, Lambeth.
Oh my goodness, okay, opposite the
Near enough.
first building that I ever worked in London when I came to London from Edinburgh, so there we go.
What? Go on.
And it's the building, well, it was an accountancy firm called Ernst & Winnie at the time, which is now amalgamated into this...
Ernst Young.
Ernst Young, and it's been something,
Yeah. They
But
sponsor a lot of art at the Tate, don't they?
They do,
Yeah, yeah.
that's right. So there's a connection there then.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's also the statue out front, which is meant to be a nurse's hat, some people said.
Really?
But I could never quite get it. So maybe you know more about it, but you don't. So
No, I don't. I'm quite ignorant south of the river, considering I was brought up in Battersea.
So
Before
you
we
were-
moved then to Surrey and then eventually Torquay and Devon.
Which is back to your father's roots.
Well, he was
Torquay.
actually born in Scotland.
Oh, was he really?
Oh, yeah,
Is he a Scot?
Yeah, he's a Scot, so I will be applying for
Wow,
that passport
okay.
when it's... I don't know what Nicola Sturgeon's up to. I
I don't
know.
think anybody does really.
I
Neither
don't
does
know.
she.
Is she good or bad? I've got no idea what's going on. Anything's got to be better than what we've got.
Well, yes.
But
Yeah, there are many opinions on that one as well, aren't there?
there
So-
is.
So he was born where in Scotland?
Yeah, he
born?
was Dumfries,
Okay.
a place called Friars Vennel, and his father Joseph. Where did he moved? I don't know. It's terrible, isn't it? I don't know the full story, but he ended up in Torquay as a taxi driver.
Right.
This was obviously before the war,
Yes.
before the Second World War, and my father had a sister called Edna. She lives in the States.
in the United
she lives
States.
in America. Her husband's Uncle Brian. He was a very successful businessman.
Mm-hmm.
However, my grandfather ended up in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. He was captured at the fall of Singapore,
Oh dear.
and from what I can gather, when he came home, he was quite violent.
Yes.
But then my auntie Edna said he was always like that. You know, when people say it was the war,
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
saying it helped, in any way. It probably did contribute to his
No, probably
behaviour.
perpetuated it. Yeah.
And he got into quite a lot of trouble. And it was basically, the magistrates have said, or the court, your war record's not going to help you if you keep this up. You'll be in serious trouble.
But it's amazing he survived.
He survived,
being,
and he ended up moving to New Zealand.
Did he?
I mean,
really?
you could. That's
a
the
real
inter-
Scottish
Yeah, but
connection
he
as well.
couldn't-
So
he couldn't have got any further away. That's what I mean.
yeah, yes.
I never met him. I only ever heard his voice on a big old Grundig tape recorder. Every so often he would send tapes over,
Yeah.
and it was like a big deal if he phoned up. But
Oh, wow.
I never met the guy.
Right.
I mean, I did hear stories about him. My dad idolised him, but the reality was he wasn't there for him.
Really.
Even when he was a kid.
Yes. Yes.
And I can remember my dad in the nursing home shortly before he died, and he remembered the number plate of a guy, a builder, that was having an affair with my grandmother, with his mother. He suddenly blurted out. We were talking one day, and he said,
Goodness.
"Yep," and I remember that number plate, 721 ADV or something like that.
That's
and it was
amazing, isn't it?
He'd
That
never
memory.
ever said any, and he had, he had onset Alzheimer's coming on.
Yes.
He just remembered it, and this is not putting blame on my grandmother at all, because with Japanese prisoner of war, they did not acknowledge the Geneva Convention, so the families didn't know if their men were
alive
or dead.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she, two young children. She was an attractive woman.
Yes. So your grandfather came back and then.
He came back, and then there
left,
was,
did
and
he?
the family sort of fractured.
Right.
Both Dad's sister, Edna, and my grandmother, Joan, ended up living in the States.
Okay. Interesting, isn't it? So but your father stayed.
He stayed.
But didn't stay in Scotland.
But
he
didn't
moved.
stay. Well, no, he was brought down to Devon as a child.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, I mean, how he met... I can't work out how he met my grandmother.
Is your grandmother Scottish? Or was she Scottish?
No.
No.
She was from, I think it was Dartmouth.
Okay.
Right, if we go down here...
So where are we now?
We're now at the back.
New Street. And...
Yeah, we're at the back of Bishopsgate Police Station.
Okay.
This is where the Tactical Firearms Unit are based. Tactical Firearms Group. You see them coming out like John Wayne, tactically dressed like John Wayne with all manner of weaponry on them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's quite intimidating.
And then
it's amazing how they can even walk with it all.
I know.
But yeah, this is where they're all based.
Okay. And then we've got this arch and a ram on top of it. So and it's called Cock Hill.
Yeah, this is. I think it's just offices. I've never gone in there. I've never really had a look in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and now we're going to go down
the alley.
Yeah, see, a lot of
Cock
people
Hill Alley.
they lose their nerve. They look down here and they can't see this.
Well, because you can't see around the corner.
They can't see around the corner. Right,
and
this is
Franco
a
Manca's
steakhouse.
here. They're
Yeah.
everywhere now. The back streets of Liverpool Street.
Well, I'll tell you, strangely, and this is hard to believe, on a Sunday morning, and we're now coming up to Middlesex Street where Petticoat Lane Market is.
Yes.
I've been walking up here, and a fox has come down and walked past me. I swear to God.
Ambling past you.
Yeah, but yesterday I was coming up the steps towards St Paul's from the Millennium Bridge.
Yeah.
And a fox just trots up over the steps.
So tame.
This
aren't
is
they,
6:30 in the evening,
Yes.
6:15. And I've looked, and there's people everywhere. Right,
They're just part of the landscape now, really, aren't they?
and it was a healthy one.
Really?
You know, yeah,
Yes.
it was healthy. Because I used to see them in Bristol, and they'd be really manky. You know, they had mange and,
Well, they've got a lot to eat around here, haven't they?
there is that. But now, we're on Middlesex Street.
Right.
This is the world famous Petticoat Lane.
Okay. So this whole neighbourhood's changed so much.
Oh, it's incredible.
Even
You've only
since
got
we've
to
all
look.
been in lockdown, I'm sure
Absolutely.
more buildings have gone up.
Yeah, I mean, Usain Bolt's restaurant was round here. He was one of the...
I didn't know he had a restaurant.
He did, it
around
was
here.
just here. And due to COVID, it closed down. But I think he's got restaurants in Jamaica. I don't think Usain Bolt is short of a few bob, if you get my drift. But unfortunately, his restaurant went.
Did you go?
No, I didn't. But, I mean, it's like Ottolenghi. I took Louise there for her birthday. It's all right. It's all right, but I know where there's little hotels in Wales where you can get a steak that's absolutely massive if that's you fancy steak.
For half
And it's like you wouldn't get one portion in London for it.
No.
And it was like we had a printer. It was to do with the book on my dad, The Torquay Tornado. We had a printer in London, and he said, yeah, well, I'm interested and I'll do it. So we've gone round to see this guy, and it's like £1,000 over the odds. It was quite a lot of money.
Really?
He said, that's London prices.
Yes.
So we said, well, that's fine. We'll go and get Welsh prices. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not wearing it like a badge of honour.
So what?
Paying all this money up here. You know, it's
I know.
madness.
It is.
I've been here, that I've done it, I've managed. It's like the Salt By guy. I mean, he's closed down now, isn't he? The restaurant where you can pay £700 for a steak. Can you believe this? £790 for a steak.
That's outrageous. Well, you wouldn't get me in there.
24 karat
You must
gold.
have your head looked at if you're going to pay that amount of money. I mean,
Or people have got more money than sense. They've got the dough.
There's a lot of money sloshing around at the moment.
There is, but it's not.
But it's not going to be around for long, I don't think.
It's not sort of, how can I put it, ordinary people as such.
No.
And then you've got credit.
Yes.
I mean, I go up and I, look at my account or whatever, and they're offering me like, you're eligible for a loan of, it's tens of thousands.
Yeah.
It's like,
but it's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, just for a laugh the other day, I sent off an Amazon card because I thought I could save £40 on whatever. I read it all wrong. And obviously there's not a cost to it, but it was just immediately approved. And oh yeah, good, there's $5,000. I mean, imagine if I was crazy.
Yes.
Well, I am, but not around spending money.
No, I know.
Right, this is interesting. The Cole, the poulterers. I keep meaning to go in there and get chicken from there. But what I'm showing you is this.
Trading as Liverpool Street chickens.
This is where it's changing. It's
Okay.
really changing. And I was looking at a plan online today, Tower Hamlets Council, and it's mentioning Middlesex Street, all this. Do not be surprised if these shops suddenly start becoming designer. I'm talking about Gucci.
Really?
I'm being serious, because the market, it's not as I remember markets as a kid. My dad had a market over at Vauxhall selling small fridges in the 60s.
Yes.
That's another story. But you had the China King, where he'd be throwing the china in the air and saying, I'm not asking £4, I'm not asking £3. You know what I mean? Then you'd have people selling cake or whatever. You had Indians selling the brassware, but you had characters. They were like a show. It was a performance.
Yes.
All you've got now is, Mrs. £5, you know what I mean? This, that, Mrs. There's no, it's boring. It's just rag, really. It's just rejects from Marks and Spencer's. I mean, there's some good stuff if you know what to look for.
Yes.
I'm not saying that, but the characters have all gone. It's just, and the shops, you'll notice there's quite a lot of nail bars, things like that. Once they start coming in, and the massage parlours, it usually means there's a short lease. I might be totally wrong on this, but this is my thinking on it, which means it's ripe for development.
Right.
It's similar to social housing.
Yes.
People do not want homeless families put in their blocks, which sounds really awful, and do you know why? Because they're not given proper tenancies. So the people are grateful for this short-term solution. But the deal is, the housing association or the council will say, when we say you've got to go, you've got to go. So it does nobody any good.
Yeah.
So they fill enough of them.
Consistency.
They get enough of them in the block. They can then go, right, we're developing this block, everyone out. And it's the same, I believe, with the shops.
Yes.
If they're short-term leases, they can then go for it. But it's interesting what they're doing around here, which leads me up to what I'm going to show you now.
Okay.
But as we go round, I mean, look at this. You've got bikes in here, which cost as much as a 6-year-old Volvo. You know what I mean? This is a push bike. Then you've got this.
I've still got my bicycle that I had when I was 14 years old.
Well, I've got a bicycle. I paid for it. Apart from cycling it up to Hackney and back to get it put right, I haven't really used it.
Right.
But Confer Carnac, which is interesting because it's all about therapy.
Is it?
It's all about high-end sort of academic therapy books. A fresh look at psychoanalytical technique, selected papers on Lacan and other heresies. You know what I mean? They're specialist books.
Yes.
There's also, I believe, a lecture theatre that you can rent in there. We're in the East End of London.
Yeah.
We're in. I mean, this is unbelievable.
It's just not the East End of London that you remember.
It's totally changing.
Yes.
Then we've got next door. I mean, you look across the road, therapy, a clinic, Chalfen. I don't even know what that is. Old mortgages, treatment rooms. There's a hair shop holding on. Probably the deli's holding on.
Yeah.
Then you've got this outdoor
Action and Travel.
Coltswold, the shop.
Oh yes.
Then we come round here. Oh, they used to be public toilets. They'll probably eventually be turned into a cocktail bar.
So all those old, so we're looking at some traders.
These stalls come
stalls.
out. They come out.
Do they?
Yeah.
When
Saturday nights they're dragged out and they're put on allocated pitches.
Okay.
But now this is interesting. We're just going to go up here. Right, now what do you see on the other side of the road?
Apart from Nails and Beauty,
Right, you've got
the
Nails and Beauty,
Lobstermonger.
the Lobstermonger.
Enterprises.
Yep.
And Time and Novelties.
Yep. That is a facade.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Right.
it is, isn't there? Isn't it?
That used to be.
There's nothing in there, is there?
There used to be. It was an import-export, but watches, the sort of things that people buy there. There was also Moo, the steakhouse in there. I remember going for a meal. What that is a gallery.
Is it?
Yeah, so behind, if I'm right, the whole back of it is like a gallery.
Okay.
I might be wrong on it, but it's a facade. It's not a facade as in, you've heard of the gentle author, haven't you? The guy that writes Spitalfield Life. It's worth checking out.
Yes, yeah.
He published a book on it, Facadism,
right. Yes,
and I can show you
it is.
So that isn't in the sense of And you know what facadism is about?
Yeah, I certainly do, yes.
An example of it's up Caledonian Road. It's usually student accommodation, and do you know why they get away with it on it? Because they're not occupied more than 34 weeks of the year. You would not be allowed to have a facade like that on the front of a building because it restricts light.
Yeah.
If somebody was living there all the time, this is all the sort of crap these Tory governments have been putting through.
Yeah.
It's the same as put another room in your attic or a shed in the garden. Property developers are using it to convert offices badly, I may say, badly, so they can legally get away with putting rooms together with no windows.
Yeah.
But I'll just quickly show you this.
The question mark is with the offices, though, is whether we're actually going to need as many offices as we do now that the whole kind of style and way of working has changed literally overnight, and more people are working from home and enjoying working from home, and companies are trusting people to work from home as well. But also lots of people are leaving large businesses and going into business by themselves and finding other ways to make money. So I don't know whether they've started to develop something that's actually going to be a white elephant before it's even finished.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I've witnessed walking through the city, like I'm talking about, off the back of the Bank of England through the lanes there, you know, on a Sunday morning on my way to the Tate, and they're clearing out offices of box files, of you know, these are obviously lawyers or whatever. The reason I've brought you here is down here, if we go down here a little bit.
So some lovely old textile, Indian like sari materials and elegant textile.
All over there, city well-being. This has just sprung up as well. Counselling services, psychotherapy, training.
Yeah,
you know, this is, so then you look at that over there, is it more than coincidence? Now all these, they're I think it's called wax print. I don't know enough about it.
Wentworth Street.
But these are famous Getzner and Holland wax. You know, these are the it's predominantly African women that run the businesses down here. But the reason I'm mentioning this, Holland, I don't know enough about it. The estate I live on is called the Holland Estate. Now, I can't see how it be anything to do, I might be wrong, to do with fabrics, even though all the silk weavers were, thank you, all the silk weavers were around in this area.
Yes.
Huguenots.
Yeah, the Huguenots, that's right. There's one street, isn't it, that's mainly, they've managed to retain the Huguenot, the houses, yes.
But I mean, that's something else. That's on the other side of, on the other side of this road. Over Commercial Street, going down like Hanbury Street. No, it's not so much Hanbury Street. Fournier Street, where Gilbert and George live.
Yeah.
But what people don't realise is a lot of those houses look like these at one point.
Yes.
They had shop fronts.
Yes.
So the fronts on them are false. They were 99-year leases. You know, Dan Cruikshank talks it up like it's all fabulous. And he's right. Thank God he did what he did when he did it. Yes. But they were jerry built. They were 99-year leases. They were wooden partitions within them. They weren't well built.
No, they're...
So it's a miracle
that they've lasted as long.
You know, that people have taken them on and they've cherished them, which is great.
Yes. I don't think I've ever walked down this street
before.
Have
you never been down
here? No. So this is a market, Wentworth Street Market is every day of the week, is
Petticoat Lane. Yeah, I mean, it's
Petticoat
all called Petticoat Lane, isn't it? I mean, on a Sunday it's packed.
Yeah. Oh, nice smell of food there. Thai food.
Yeah, we were talking about diet earlier.
We were, weren't we? Let's not go there.
But you see, like Holland textiles.
Yes.
Because it was all Dutch. It was the wax
yes,
prints.
Yes.
But I've got from what I can gather, the connection with Holland Estate, I've got a horrible feeling it's to do with a landed sort of, landed gentry. It was a titled family. They also owned massive tracts of land over at Kensington and Hammersmith because it was all open.
Yeah.
It was like parkland. And I don't know if this was part of it, that they own part of this land. I'd like to think it's something to do with Holland print, but I don't think it is. I think it's to do with that. Even though the social housing, the houses around here, the blocks are predominantly named after clergymen.
Are they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, the one that I live in, Carter House, it was originally, I've got original plans of it that I bought from the Metropolitan Archive. You know, they'll do like a copy for you. And on the original London County Council plans, it had Booth House. And Booth House was scratched out, and it's got Carter House written in its place. Everything round here was called Booth at one point, because Booth was the guy that started, him and his sister, was it? Or he started the Salvation Army. So there was you couldn't swing a cat without hitting something called Booth. Now, Ernest Carter, had a church near Toynbee Hall. The church was demolished during the war, but he and his wife went down on the Titanic. He led the prayers on the deck as the Titanic was going down. So I'm named, the block I live in is named after some dear old guy that went down on the Titanic.
Goodness.
But I believe he was originally from Plymouth.
Okay.
But, and Barnet House on the other side, if we go down this way.
Sure.
Barnet House on the other side. Oh, this is it's my mate Shams. All right, Shams. All right, mate. Can we meet up at some time? That would be lovely. Thank you.
It's your neighbour, is he?
Yeah, he's an accountant. He's a very he also does a bit of boxing.
A bit of boxing?
Yeah, he
okay.
does a bit of boxing.
We'll talk about this, but I want to talk about boxing and your father's boxing career as well.
Yeah, but we'll
finish this first.
I'll just tell you about Barnet House.
Yes.
Because it's relevant. Over there
Yes.
is Toynbee Hall.
Okay.
And Barnet, isn't it terrible? I can't remember his first name. It was him. Hold on, I made a note of this because it is important. Yeah, he was an Anglican priest, social reformer. He established Toynbee Hall with his wife Henrietta in 1884.
Yes.
Now Toynbee Hall was like an experiment. This is where you've got Oxbridge graduates coming in the first time working with poverty in the East End.
Right.
And then of course you've got Jack London, people of the Abyss later on.
Yeah.
So it took an American really to point out just how bad it was for the British working classes.
Yes.
And the irony
it's
is...
the irony, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't the blonde beast, wasn't he born in New York?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, don't get me started.
Yes.
That's my dentist, they're fabulous. Dr. Sammy.
Dr. Sammy.
Yeah, Ghanaian. This is fabulous. I've got to say it. This is a new development by Curio, or whatever, called Our Place. And it's in a sort of Art Deco style, which has got really no relevance to here, because this is all Neo-Georgian. If you look at the pediments, you see above, and you'll notice this when you look at the estate of Holland Estate. It's all that Neo-Georgian architecture, but it seems to work. I've got to say it works.
Yes.
And they've used this white tile, and they look like black crittle windows, those metal frames.
1930s.
Yeah, where you used to have to put towels on the mantle, you know what I mean, because of all the condensation.
Yes, yeah.
But again, look at those colours that are similar to those muted colours we saw on those facades over...
I see what you mean.
Do you see what I mean? Kind of continuity.
Yeah,
it's like a colour scheme that's...
Yes. Bring the whole neighbourhood together through colour.
Yeah.
Make it all connected.
But I think it's done quite tastefully with the London brick. And then look at this. I mean, I've got to say, this has got to be one of the best developments I've seen.
So
I mean,
this is all one. This
is all one. They've gone up another level to 2 levels, because where we are in Tower Hamlets, how they got away with that massive Nido building, which is like 38 stories, that was criminal. But it's over that side. Yeah. And I'm no good at direction here, so I'd be no good finding my way around New York. However,
you and me both.
There is a ruling that buildings, their elevation mustn't interfere with the eye line towards the Tower of London.
That's right.
There's some weird malarkey around that.
True, yeah.
Now they've gone up 2 here above what was here, which was shops, which was mentioned in I can never pronounce it. Pevsner's historical buildings guide. Yeah, yes. Because they were workshops, and then they were later shops. There was Conway Trading, which I believe up until the mid-80s, it was socks and gents' underwear, stuff like that. Right. There was a restaurant, I think it was called the Lahore, down on the end. But talking of foxes again, I've come out of here at night sometimes, and my headlights would pick up the fox's eyes
Really?
coming out, because they all lived in there. There were loads of foxes in there. So I don't know where the foxes went. They've been decanted. But to where, I don't know. They could have gone over to Itchy Park, which is next to Spitalfields Church.
Okay.
And it was called Itchy Park because a lot of the homeless guys lived there. You know, so and there were like tea stalls and things around here. But I mean, it's not that quaint anymore, is it? You know what I mean? It's all...
Well, it seems it's a sort of a place in transition. It's neither one thing nor the other at the moment, is it?
Well, it's certainly not a poor area, let's put it that
No.
way. I mean, we had to fight to stay here in a way.
Did you?
Yeah, they did.
So, and this is like a... What's this? What is this then? This is like a...
This is the so-called local pub.
The local pub, okay.
This is the Duke of Wellington. But I think it's part of a pub portfolio.
So you've got this really tall building. That building in front of
That's
us
the
is
one.
A bit of a
but you
monstrosity.
see, absolutely. But you see the eye line. It's not going to interfere with that because it's in. What is that? So that's west, isn't it? Going west.
Yeah.
So it's not going to interfere with it. This is where I live. This is Carter House.
Oh, this is Carter House. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're kind of you're completely overshadowed by this building here, but opposite, see that's the soup
Right,
kitchen.
this is the Jewish soup kitchen.
Yes. So
Now,
I wonder whether the children came here first when they came from Liverpool Street
I
Station.
don't know. Actually, I've never thought of that. But there were still 500 people on its books when it closed in 1991.
Right.
And they fed the Gentiles as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't exclusively Jewish.
The Jewish.
And you see the tour guides outside. I earwig on what they're saying sometimes.
I have to look
I
it up.
think his name was Isaac Solomons. I can't think how to describe this. The stonework is like a light colour, it's sandy coloured on the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah.
With a red brick. And the pediments and window frames are still in that sort of light. It's not like a Portland stone. I don't know what it is.
No, it's a terracotta.
It's a terracotta.
Yeah.
But
like.
I've been into there's a lady on the top. She let me take photographs from her flat. They bought that off plan in 1993, I think.
Did they?
Yeah.
And is it offices or is it?
No, it's all private apartments.
It's all private.
The one we're looking at now, straight here with the combination sort of lock on it,
Yes,
which is the main entrance, and I think that's the it's the Jewish calendar above there, which is in the year 1902, but it translates to theirs, which is like 5662, which you know. My ignorance, I don't know what it is, but the font's interesting as well, which is very nouveau.
Yeah, I love the way there's a way in and a way out.
Yeah. But this particular apartment, which we're looking at now, the double-fronted one with the door in the middle, 9, there's a basement. I've been in there as well. That was some years ago. There were builders in there. They let me go in and have a look around. And they were asking something like 1.8 million for it then. It's now a dance studio. There's people coming in, they do dance. Well, they're doing dance in there. Yes. And interestingly, do you remember that banker that got sent away back in about 2013? No. He was a black guy. That's why everybody sort of, you know what I mean?
I can't remember.
I mean, it makes me wonder if he was sort of locked up because of that fact. You know what I mean? I don't know. But he was a trader.
Right.
And it's one of those things, if you get away with it, good-o. If you don't, you know what I mean? I mean, but this guy got time for it. But he actually rented that, and everybody had nothing but good things to say about him. Really? He was, apparently a decent bloke by all accounts. Okay. But then I don't know. If I was living it high on the hog, I might be. But he lived in there.
So your block is
this
here. 1960s?
This is the first block. This was finished in 1928.
28. Wow.
1928.
Okay.
And they wanted to. This is great. I checked this out at the London Metropolitan Archive, and this is sort of that Days of Empire. They wanted to use nothing but British materials. That's why we've got Canadian pine in some of the floorboards. Yeah. So it's Days of Empire, isn't it? So it's not like it's come from Scotland, is it? But so it's London brick. Is it Fettle? The brick? I can't. Commonwealth. Yeah.
This is a stock. There's a stock. It's a stock brick.
It's a stock brick.
And then you've got around the windows and everything. They've used like a rubber brick, as they call it.
But again, look, you can see the pediments, where the style of it.
Yes.
Because you wonder, well, how is it neo-Georgian, but it is. And you look at the roofs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like Pantole. It's not, though. It'd be diabolically expensive if it was Pantole roofs.
Yes.
These only go up like 1, 2, 3, 4 stories here. But there was talk of a consultation to demolish it. This was in 2013, and then East End Homes decided to basically refurbish the blocks. They did a lot of work. They put in a water pumping station. They're also they're now looking at putting in lifts, which were promised to the original residents when they were Tower Hamlets Council.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
And it handed over to the Housing Association with the proviso that they put in lifts and they do this. And I think we like to think they're getting round to doing it now. I've got to say, East End Homes. I've got to say, I'm part of the estates inspection. I do it with the housing officer who's become a friend at Edgar Tannoy. And as housing associations go, they've been good. They have listened. I mean, there has been, we've had our ups and downs with them. There's been the bawling and shouting, the walking out, all that carry on, dirty looks and the rest of it that goes with, these things happen. But generally, as housing associations go, and considering where we are and what's at stake here as well, they've been pretty good.
And it's interesting that the signage there, so you've got no ball games, and then it's written in Arabic.
Bengali. But I presume, I'm saying it's, what would it be, Sanskrit? I'm not sure, I'm ignorant. I'll have to ask my mate Kabir. He's up on the top. Kabir, my pal,
it's very significant or symbolic of the neighbourhood that's here, isn't it?
The interesting thing is this. What people forget when they see we'll have a call to prayer going on in the back in a minute, right? You can see it from mine. No one wanted to live here. No one. These places were slums, right? And you had people coming in from. I think it's Sylhet. It's called in Bangladesh. There's a big community that they know families like back home that live here now. But when they were living here, no one wanted to live here, and I don't know what would have happened if they hadn't have moved in. You know what I mean? If these immigrants hadn't have moved in and regenerated the area, because.
And looked after the buildings.
What would have happened?
Yeah.
Well, no, this is part of the issue. They were grateful for what they got.
Yes.
And they didn't kick up. And in some ways they were manipulated. They'd get the elders that would be part of the housing or the councils, and they'd do what they were told basically, because they didn't know any better. Then you've got the second generation, third generation come along. My mate Shamsa, we just saw down there, who's an accountant, they've realised, hold on, things aren't quite right here. And they've started, like, when they put a demolition order, everybody got together. It was like everybody on the estate. And you've got people from all over living on the estate. But it's predominantly the older residents are Bengalis. And before that, they would have been Jewish.
Right.
So it's been Huguenots, Jews from the pogroms, Eastern Europe, the Bengalis, and then the Bengalis break down into the Asian the components of Sikhs, Indians, electrical goods, Pakistani leather workers. From what I can gather, I've got a pal, Kamal, his dad was a leather worker. I'm not saying they were all, but that seems to be one of the skills.
Sure.
And also with the Bengalis, it was they created the kitchens, the canteens for the food, the cheap food or whatever.
It's a history to be written just
it's fabulous.
Of this building.
I mean, you go up from my side, right? So Kabir on the top, he's a teacher. Know him. He's from Morocco. He is doing computer studies and works at Pizza World. I'm in there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's and Kabir's dad lives next door to him. So there is a sense of community. I mean, we've had all sorts here. I've had pop-up brothels and all. It's been terrible. I'm serious. It'd all be very discreet, but you knew what was going on.
Yeah. This is the call to prayer.
And now, I have 3 students from the Barbican Music School living next door, asking me if their cello and violin disturbs me. Can you believe it? And I said, I couldn't. I just looked at them and thought, I can't explain to you very quickly what I've had to put up with here. And this is Tim, he's a scriptwriter that lives there.
Okay, and how...
Mrs. Ali lives there.
How did you end up being here?
I had a housing association flat in Bristol, and I had done a couple of readings. The first book we brought out, Lubin Tales, we'd come up to, was it the Wapping Project?
Okay.
Where you sat in the greenhouse, the bookshop? Not there anymore.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it is. So I'd done some readings there.
Yes.
I can't remember where else. And Louise and I stayed over near, it was Bloomsbury, it was near the hairdressers where Kenneth Williams was born above. We stayed in a bed and breakfast at a hotel around the corner. And Louise said to me, because we were both living in Bristol then, why don't you think about getting a place in London? And I thought, well, that's easier said than done. What chance have I got of doing that? And I put up on Home Swapper, to cut a long story short, a woman who was an artist who lived in this flat.
Yes.
And the irony of it being, I wouldn't have had this flat if the Olympics hadn't happened.
Oh my goodness.
Because she lived in a cooperative.
Right.
Up at Stratford.
Mm-hmm.
And
take our shoes off.
yeah. And please come in.
Yeah, don't walk too fast, because we're attached by
okay,
cables.
okay. Yeah, just let it go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just put them in.
Thank you.
She lived in a cooperative up at Stratford.
Shall we just stop for a second
All
then,
right.
and then...
Yeah, then get established.
Yes. Okay, so we've come into your house now.
To the abode.
To the abode, and the call to prayer is going on outside, which
yeah.
is lovely.
In the court,
takes me back
in
to
the
my
courtyard.
Balkan days.
Yeah.
In the courtyard, and we were talking about how you ended up here in Liverpool Street.
We're a
Tower
stone's
Hamlets,
throw from the city.
Mm.
There's a saying, when you're in Wentworth Street, which we walk down,
Yes.
where all the African wax shops are, the print shops predominantly, if your foot is in the gutter, you're in Tower Hamlets. If your foot is on the pavement, you're in the city.
There
it's
we go.
that close.
Wow. Okay.
You know what I mean? The city is literally just round the corner.
Okay.
And at the end of this road,
Yes.
she's moved out now, but Tracy Emin, that was her studio.
Oh, was it?
The
It's now in
Tentagram. She
Margate.
did all that. She did all that up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, that's a great legacy she left, really.
Yes.
You know, and then in the rondels on the roof, it's Tracy Kamal Emin, so it's in gold letters. And I remember I'm mentioning that because she told me that at the tape. I spoke to her.
She?
Yeah,
Lovely
yeah. This was before she was ill.
So we were talking about
I
the
swapped.
Olympics.
There was a woman. She was an artist that lived here, and she'd been part of a cooperative at Stratford. When the development of the Olympics occurred, they basically offered her a deal, so she ended up with this flat.
Mm-hmm.
But she had family in Bath, and she wanted to move to Bristol, but she didn't want to be that close to them. She wanted a distance.
Yes, yes.
So she saw the flat that I had in Bristol. She liked it. I came up here, saw her flat. I said, yeah, let's swap. And that was it. Well, she said, let's swap.
Wow, that's brilliant.
And this front room, I mean, it's all carpeted now, but it used to have black boards on the floor. And they had there was indentations all over it. And she told me it was from the original West End production of Stomp. It was part of the stage, because they just have to change the stage.
Yes, of course it would.
The stage floor every so often or whatever.
Go. So this whole block of flats is full of artists, you as an author, carpenters, accountants, leather workers, a real medley from around the world as well of people and culture.
There's still quite a lot of Bengalis on this side, and there's quite a lot of working guys that are delivery riders, and they're out on all weathers and all hours, and there's like 4 or 5 of them living to a flat. So it's not all exclusively. There's a lot of essential workers around here as well,
right,
that I know. Yeah, absolutely. My mate Halal, he's a bus driver. He's training. He's doing the knowledge as well. He wants to be a cabbie. There's another pal of mine over there, Mohammed. He works in student support services over the road. The guy we saw earlier, Shamsa, he's an accountant, as I mentioned. Kabir upstairs is a teacher. So there's a guy downstairs, he's a script writer. So there's still a mix.
Yeah.
Next door, they're musicians at the Guildhall Music Studio. So, you know, it's great. Mrs. Ali, she's elderly. Her husband died about 5 years ago, Mr. Raleigh. So, the community keeps an eye on her.
Yes,
She's looked after. The housing association are aware she's on her own and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a good sense of community here as well. But it's not all exclusively. So, I mean, there's an MP's son or daughter that we can't mention their surname, who owns one of the flats over there.
Okay.
Not of any interest. They're all boring, aren't they? I mean, the fact, let's face it, is show business for ugly people, isn't it? But moving on from that.
Let's talk a bit about your books.
Yeah.
Because we met initially.
It was fabulous. It was through John Lynch. It was a chap called John Lynch.
That's right, through John.
And
course.
he's a decent.
Hello, John, if you're listening.
A decent fellow.
Yes.
He's always championed me.
Yes. And he introduced you to the shop.
He did.
That's right. I'd forgotten that.
Did.
Sorry, John. And through that,
he was a friend of my pal Harry.
Okay.
I met John through Harry.
Okay. I don't think I've met Harry.
I don't think you've met Harry. He's a psychotherapist.
Okay. I don't think he came to the shop. Maybe he did. And if he did, I don't remember.
I think he would have. He probably would have popped over there.
But
the shop was fabulous. It was a lovely shop.
I do miss it in many ways.
Yeah, over at Waterloo.
Yes,
yeah,
by Lower Marsh. We sold 2 of your books at that time. It was Smoke and Other Tales
and Lubin Tales. Yeah.
And also your cards.
The cards.
Which we sold quite a lot of those.
Yeah.
Cards.
I wish you were still there.
Oh, so do I in some ways.
I'm too lazy to go out and tout them around. Explain them.
But you the style of those.
You got it though. You sort of got it. The cards were the starting point.
Yes.
With the microfictions on the back, the images on the front, the strap line. My favourite one was "You were weird at school and your house is filthy, but you're still my friend." Yes. And there's a short story on the back. The cards created Lubin Tales.
Is that how it happened?
And it fleshed out, the stories were fleshed out, and the characters, the poodle faker, the stealer, and these were characters based on people I'd known or experiences that I'd been through or whatever.
Yes.
And I think it's the same with any writers. How can you say this is fiction and this is that? It doesn't come out of nothing.
No.
Even, coming back to science fiction, it's going to manifest itself in something, even if it's like the theme of the story or like a linear narrative. It's got to hook itself on something.
Sure.
There's got to be some basis in there of fact. It's not pure fiction. You're making the whole language up, the landscape, everything. It relates to something.
Yeah. So the style of those books, the 2 books,
Lubin Tales
and Smoke
and Other Tales.
Like one has the barber's chair on the front.
Yeah.
And the other one has the image of the gherkin as we call it.
But it was taken from the balcony of social housing.
Okay.
So that shot, even though I say it myself, is quite clever because it covers housing, education, and the financial district.
Yes.
Because within it, you've got the London, there's I think it's at London Metropolitan University, but that's the shot from that balcony, and then you see the gherkin. Mm-hmm. And how it's even changed. That was shot, 6 years ago, that photograph? There's other buildings around it now, the Skull Pool, all these other high-rises have gone up, financial institutions.
Yes. And the books themselves, again, were almost like short tales or short stories.
Yeah.
But there was a theme running through them, as I remember.
Yes.
That connected the poodle faker to the other characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It was sort of set in down at heel South Coast resorts like Torquay. And the sort of characters that were drawn to those places, how can I put it? They're like quite dysfunctional. Antique dealers,
right?
People like that, unorthodox businessmen, and it's sort of not. I wouldn't say it's like a faded grandeur. Mm-hmm. It's like something that it doesn't exist anymore in those areas. And I tried to capture it. The ambience of a bedsit, things which you're not going to see anymore. Coin-fed meters, the sort of carpets with Vesta curries, the shared skeletal sort of cooker. In a really sort of, the Rick Lino sort of kitchen. not necessarily slums, but that's how it was with bedsits and the sort of people that were there sort of in those circumstances.
The irony of that, actually, is that this new phase of vintage, it almost is a reflection of that, but in a very different
Well, they try
setting.
too hard now.
Yes, yeah.
It's not genuine.
No, it's not at all.
It doesn't have a purpose. It's like, God rest him, there was an old guy upstairs, I forget his surname, that was next to Kabir, an old Asian gentleman, and he passed away a couple of years ago. But he was having his flat done up. And the stuff that was coming out, paraffin heaters, cookers from the 1950s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was out the front. This is in like 2016, 2018. I mean, I took photographs of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, to him it was normal and everyday. And to me, I could relate to this.
Yeah.
You know, I could remember, you don't sit on top of the paraffin heater. You don't put the tea towels on it unless you want a flower sort of burnt print of, you know, the vents of the heat, you know, stuff like that. It sort of took me back, but it had a use.
Yes.
It wasn't just for, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, in an advertising agency, they might have one in the corner gathering dust, like a chopper bicycle. You know, all that sort of stuff. They're like triggers for memory, aren't they? And all that's associated with it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's where, I mean, the title of your new book, which came out in September.
Yeah. Come back to me and go away.
And go away again.
Come back to me, then go away. That's it. I'm starting to forget the title, but it's that come
memory,
back to me,
is it like
then go away.
Is that
yeah, it's like remember it and let it go.
And then let it go.
But that's been like the whole book.
Yes.
You know, it was to get a publisher, because everything else had been self-published and kick-started, and I was given support with Smoke and Other Tales by Will Self, graciously doing a 500-word introduction. So it sort of validated the writing to a degree, and I felt that, you know, it's only one way to go, and that's to get better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So Tangent Books picked
up on it. Richard Jones, who's based in Bristol. It tends to be, you know, it's sort of, how can I put it, socialist writers, or it's been like the history of Bristol. It's been rather Bristol centric. There's also a connection with Stanley Donwood and Radiohead, and also with Banksy. Published one of the books is Home Sweet Home, which has been very successful. But I was lucky in that Richard stood by me and said, basically, you write the book, and obviously if it's up to scratch, I'll publish it, which was a fabulous thing to do.
So where did you start with that book? Where did you...
I started in Battersea. I started in Orkney Street, Battersea, and sitting in my dad's Vauxhall Vanguard. And an early memory, he'd gone into my grandmother's, Nanny Lil's, my mum's mum, and I was outside in the car. I think I was a bit of a handful. I was hyperactive. It'd have been ADT or whatever, you know, they'd have had me on Ritalin. I had to wait until I was about 17 to discover them, but that's something else. But I can remember going through the glove box, because he was a refrigeration engineer, retired from boxing. And there was always threepenny bits in the glove box for phone calls. And I'd go into the corner shop and buy these, you know, lucky bags full of sweets and, you know. But that's the memory.
Yes.
You know, it was sitting in that car. It starts from there. And you've got a linear narrative that runs through the book of, like, you know, being a kid and then being an adult, you know, and dysfunctional with it, and not exactly being a valuable member of society at certain points. Let's put it that way. I think the book goes up to 1993. But within these chapters, there are these fractures that are called distractions, and they're set in the recent now. Mm-hmm. So they're set in the last 2 years. So they obviously cover lockdown.
Yes.
And they're observations, sort of what I'm seeing now. And I've tried to sort of put more of a literary quality into the distractions, whereas the narrative of sort of I'm a kid and then I'm naughty and I'm an adult, that's just matter of fact. Mm-hmm. That's how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And it's not to glamorize anything. It's just this is how it was. And it was a natural progression from Lubin Tales. And as you picked up on, that there was a connecting theme through these books, which was this dysfunction of the South Coast resorts. Mm. And sort of refracted through London as well, early memories through these characters, which were, you know, they could have been fiction of the imagination, let's say, whereas Come Back to Me, Then Go Away It's like having the nerve to say, well, this is really what happened.
Yeah,
That's really what it's about.
So has it been more of a release of memory?
Yeah, it's been a bit uncomfortable, really.
Yeah.
In that it's quite, it's quite revealing. And
was there a lot of emotion attached to it, to be able to actually review it almost, and then say, okay, I'm going to let this go?
Yeah.
And could you let it go, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, I think I have. I found some of it really disturbing to write. And of course, nobody knows what's going on in somebody else's head. I could have written anything I wanted. But I just didn't see the point of it. If you're going to change, there's got to be some honesty.
Yes.
It's like, I thought of people that would be, maybe critical of the way I live my life or whatever. And to them, I'd say, well, it's easier to stay the same than it is to change. You know what I mean? It's dead easy to be on the straight and narrow all the way through. But that's the right way. No, it isn't. That's the way. Because I believe with a lot of people, it's that they just, they don't know any better. I don't mean that as a criticism, but that's just, it's easy to criticize someone. Look what you did. Yeah. It's like this whole thing, the society we're living in at the moment, the way it's fractured with shame and, benefit cheats and, God forbid, awful things like that, turning people against each other. That's basically what I'm saying. Instead of celebrating things that, that's pretty good, you turn that round or whatever. Yeah. And at the same time, I recognise that no one was ever going to stop in the rain at a bus stop and say, oh, well done, you turn your life around. Why should they? People have got enough to contend with in their own lives. And when I look at things like last night, I watched 3 documentaries on the First World War by what would have been young soldiers relating their experiences. You don't realise you've been born after you've seen things like that. Yeah. So I know how lucky I am. There's that as well. There's a lot of gratitude, that I've had the opportunity to do this stuff. And I don't know what else to do. It's like my hobby, it's like not my hobby. It's
just comes naturally.
Well, once I used to drink and do whatever and take drugs and do this, and that's what I did, and I did it relentlessly, and that's what I did. There wasn't one foot in the camp, and I went to work on a Monday and I did it. I did it all the time. Right. I lived like, outside of the law, I suppose, and now I don't. But you've got to have something, I believe, to take that over. There's, people go to self-help groups, they do whatever they do. But I found art, I found writing, in that's my sort of...
release.
It's my release. Yeah. And it's, it's something which I believe if you keep practicing it, you'll get better at it. Yeah. Hopefully. Through
your youth growing up, did you write? Was it something that just came naturally to you, or you would?
No, it didn't really. It didn't. But it was. I remember an English teacher being encouraging, saying that basically you're good at this, you can do whatever it was. It was to do with English, and it was a positive affirmation. And I think as a young person, whatever, I held on to that. And I remember, for me, what was important, I was in a children's home, and I started a 3-page magazine, which you did with carbon paper. You put 1 page carbon paper, another page carbon paper, another. So it was something like, it was like 3 pages. I wish I had a copy now. God knows whatever happened to it. So there was always this thing that, like expressing yourself through text or whatever. I never stopped doing it. But I'd write stuff and then destroy it all, just get rid of it, like starting again, photographs. I'd do it. I'd start all over again. I've done that. There's so many things. There's no point in regretting it now. Photographs, journals, stuff. I've just binned it and started again. But
that's probably a good thing. You're not filled with clutter.
No.
I met somebody when I was travelling years and years ago. And he didn't carry a camera. Yeah. And he never took photographs. He said, as I travel, I'm taking photographs in my mind, and what the memories will be those things that stick. And and those have more impact and influence on me than a poignancy than a photograph. Yes, a photograph can be a trigger. Yeah. But it was a very, I take far too many photographs
Yeah.
in comparison, but I thought it was very a completely different side to travel and seeing what is the point of photography unless it has a purpose and a meaning for you. I suppose. And that we forget that the camera in our heads has the whole album, but you just need to hit the button.
That's interesting about photography, because it's like relating it to William Burroughs and cut-ups, and you can relate it to writing. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm looking at you now, but I'm not seeing just you. There's fragments around, there's all the other things that's going off it. You know, like in the edit, it's all cut up.
Yes.
And it's the same in a memory. Mm. If you've got a photograph, you've just got that, what's in front of you. Yes. Whereas if you go what this guy was, how I'd relate to it, you'd conjure up that memory, but there'll be all the other things associated with it that's never going to be captured in a photograph.
No.
You know, but yeah, I'd go with that. I mean, I kept records of things because I had such a bad memory, possibly. Mm-hmm. But it's like I had a flood here during lockdown. It only affected the hallway and the bathroom, but it was bad twice. It happened.
From above.
From above.
Oh dear.
And we got it all sorted out. It was all fine in the end. I was in Wales, I had to come up. But all I could think of was the book. As long as the book's all right, that we've got it sort of, you know, it's in the cloud or it's on the computer. Mm-hmm. That's all I could. Not any of the possessions. Yes, it was the book, and that's genuine. Yeah. That is not. I'm just saying. All my clothes, everything. All I was thinking about was the book. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how important it is when I think about it. Right. The writing is so important. Yeah. You know.
So where is the book going? I mean, have you...
The book, it was launched at the Arnolfini successfully.
Congratulations.
Richard organised it all.
Yes.
And it was a fabulous night. I've got to say, it was a fabulous night. You know, because I've wandered off and then I've come back in like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes before it started. And there were all these people, and it was like, I felt like saying, well, you've obviously lost your way. It was quite overwhelming. And then, the next morning I did my back in, but that's something else.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was whatever. But so that was great. Then there was, I did a reading in Wales it was a coffee shop arranged by a guy that ran an organic store. And it was unusual. It was in Llanelli, and it was a good evening, and a pal of mine filmed it. But I know this, I mean, it sounds like sort of a lack of ambition after all the hard work that went into it, and a lot of hard work did go into it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I had a mate, he's a musician called Adam Stewart. He did most of the editing along with Louise. You know, we bat and ball it back, but there was a bit of copy editing done at Tangent. But, you know, the hard work had been done.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it took about 3 years to write the book. I think it's about 3 years. But it's like, it's achieved its goal as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, if some other readings come along, good-o. You know, we're trying to sort something out around here in the East End in association with the Royal Academy. It's to do with artists having a show. Possibly I'll do a reading within that.
Right.
And that's somebody I know. And again, it's possibly with the support of East End Homes, because it'll be an empty shop.
Right.
But that's something else, and you heard it here first. But I don't feel that sort of desperation to get out there, because I realise that, you know, I'm of a certain age. Open mic nights aren't going to do me any good. I've got to start thinking sort of tactically about how I'm going to get my writing out there and continue to do so.
Yes.
But the main thing was, God bless him, the support of Richard Jones at Tangent. So I've got a bona fide publisher, so that opens the doors for other things.
Yes.
And at the moment, it's sort of taking a deep breath as well after what we've been through, as we discussed earlier, how it's affecting people. And, you know, it's like, in some ways, it's like, in the immortal words of Keith Richards, it's good to be here, it's good to be anywhere. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I'm just happy that things are working out as they are.
Yeah.
There's been so much sort of opportunity in that where I work part-time at the Tate. I found that many of the exhibitions sort of manifested themselves in the writing, and they were also a comment on what's going on now. You know, I didn't wedge it in there.
Yeah.
It was just it was organic. It was natural. certain things. I'm thinking of Red Star Over Russia, which was about propaganda, which was about Stalin, which was about your political dishonesty, manipulating, the media. This stuff is so relevant to now. And also the Warhol exhibition. It just found its way into the writing, into predominantly the distractions. But working at Tate, that's certainly been really sort of influential.
It has,
how it all came together.
Yeah.
And the people I've met there. And even during lockdown, the support, the sort of community of friends, like, even from a manager, like, this Italian woman, she'd ring us all up saying, is everybody okay? You know what I mean? There was some genuine sort of concern there. I'd go out for walks with my mate Max. You'd find him interesting. He was in Bosnia. I mean, this is a guy that went in a double-decker bus. It was clowns and theatre, taking it into Sarajevo.
Really?
Into the kids.
Have to have a chat with him, definitely.
And good man. And his partner Samantha, we'd go on these walks. I mean, one of our records was, I think, 30,000 steps one day. But this was during lockdown.
Yeah. Anything to get out.
It was to get out, and he's a photographer, as I said. So he used that sort of as an opportunity. So it was like living on a Doctor Who set. Loads of deserted streets. Really bizarre.
And during that period, the Tate was obviously closed as well. And has reopened with a very interesting looking exhibition, which I'm going to go and see after.
It's fabulous.
All these sort of blobs.
Aerobes.
What are they
called? Aerobes.
The aerobes. And your Instagram post of that really made me laugh.
The xenophobes are the tentacled looking floating objects.
Yes.
And the planuli are the other ones that look like potatoes.
Okay.
And it's a fabulous exhibition because there's an olfactory experience as well. We're in the smell that you'll have when you go in there today is the machine age.
Okay.
And which is alluding to what the Tate Modern originally was, which was a power station.
Yeah, the turbine. Wasn't it?
So the turbine hall and the xenophobes, the tentacled ones, tend to heat seek to a degree. So if there's a gathering of people, but they never bump into each other, they're programmed to stay apart and at a certain height. But the planuli move into the spaces that they move out of. Okay. And that's their own. Their expectations are nothing else than that, than to move into the vacated space of. Okay. So they're non-discriminatory. They're not sort of really taking anything from anyone. But and of course it's a relaxing experience. You don't want lights and I think Tate Modern, our curatorial team or whatever, whoever's made this decision, it's the most. I can't think of anything else that could be so relevant to now because it's so serene, it's so relaxing, and it's visually, it's beautiful. It works.
Well, I will go and enjoy that a bit later.
Okay.
But coming back to you and your life, you spent time in Torquay, which is where your father was, and he was a boxer. Yes. And known as the Torquay Tornado.
Yes.
And was he a boxer when you were a child, or was he born after that period of his life?
He sort of retired within a year of me being born. That's the effect I had. No, I don't know. But that was...
Because he was very successful.
He was successful. He was successful at one point. He was rated 5th in the welterweight division in this country. I think it was 1955. He was rated 5th in the UK, and it was the era of the hungry fighter. There was a lot of boxers, so he did well to do that. But he had an exploitative manager. I'm not making excuses for him because I read all this and we put the book together about his life. So I got to know this, and he was a bit lazy in some ways, but, because he was pretty good at what he did, but he just didn't like the self-promotion or the right manager. He just had this awful manager, which turned him into a journeyman fighter, which was basically fighting for money. Right. It wasn't the prestige of like now they would say, right, you'll go for this one.
Picking and choosing.
It'll be like, there's some sort of plan to this.
Yes.
There wasn't a plan, it was just.
And did his success and then sudden kind of move away from the whole boxing?
Yeah,
world?
I think I think it all ended for him really when he finished boxing. He was always trying to recapture that, and the nearest he got to it was working in nightclubs. You know, and these were clubs that still had like the resident band and comedians, so that there was some sort of how can I put it, glamour to them. They weren't like discos or whatever. And he had pals in London that ran clubs and stuff. He had all these old friends, but I think it was always for him. It was the boxing. He was a bit lost, but he did do some good. You know, we worked with him mentally and physically handicapped. At Langton Hospital. So, you know, I think he did try to give something back.
Did he ever encourage you to be a boxer?
No, he'd take me to boxing club in Torquay, and I can remember going off down the beach, after we'd been to the boxing club, but he never sort of, he didn't push me towards it.
And his success as a boxer, did that have a positive effect on you and your aspirations, or what?
No, I don't think so, because he was always the centre of attention. You know, it was very much that. And it's that generation. They were all damaged by the war, either their fathers or not being there, or their experiences in the war, and then couple that with, boxing, the violence that surrounds that, or whatever that surrounds that. It's not exactly conventional, is it? So, no, I don't think it was, I was probably always wanting some attention. That's what I reckon. Yeah, and I was a bit of a sort of handful. You know, as I said, I think I was overactive, which would have probably done everybody's head in. So, but in lots of ways, he was a decent guy. No one's perfect.
No.
And I have, very fond memories of my dad. But
you alluded to the fact that you went down a bit of a dark alley for a while.
Yeah, it was quite a number of years. It was.
What triggered that?
I've got no idea. I've got no idea.
You just took a wrong turn.
It's too easy to say. I was led astray, because I wasn't. I don't think I was led astray. I was left to my own devices a lot. My mother had a lot of illness. It's not a case of like my dad wasn't. That he had a lot going on in his life as well, and he didn't know how to handle it. That's the truth of it. He didn't know how to be a parent in some ways, and my mum was so ill. You know what I mean? And I'm running wild.
Yes.
I remember living with a girl for 3 weeks when I was nearly 15. She was 17. Her mum ran a nursing home, and she was in hospital. And I was living with her. And I was telling my mum and dad I was helping a friend at his mum and dad's hotel in Teignmouth. No one cared. No one was, it wasn't a case of, it was... And she was as dysfunctional as I was. She was another grammar school girl. They always seem to be grammar school girls. So I don't know. She was a bright spark. She's dead now, Penny.
Was it a lack of purpose then? Did you just have?
I didn't really know what to do.
Were you at school right up to?
Oh, I was terrible, truancy.
18, or did
No,
you?
16. I left. I had a Francis Barnett 250. I wasn't old enough to be riding the bike. And it was an art class, and I asked to use the toilet, and I got on the bike and rode off, and that was it, and never went back to school. And the truant officer came round, I said, I've left. I said, I'm not playing truant, I've left. Mr. Phillips, he was called. He had a big Austin. You can imagine he was like a sergeant major in the army, or something like that. And again, there was a lot of like dysfunction at home. I was drinking alcoholically then at 16 and taking a lot of amphetamine. I was lost. When I look back on it, I was lost. And I'm sure my dad would have said, look, you've got to pull yourself together. You can't go on like this, son. You know what I mean? But it was all crazy. He was working in a nightclub. People would go, one night 4 people were shot dead. It was like, you're living with this craziness. It was...
And you, in the meantime, are just just have no direction whatsoever.
There was no direction.
So you
I mean,
just
other kids would have, there's probably people that will say, well, yeah, the same thing happened to me, but I didn't turn out that way. Well, I did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It just happened. And then, next thing, I'm in Borstal. No detention centre. It was straight to Borstal. And, I tried to achieve while I was in there. I took O-levels. There were trades to learn, either welding or capstan lathe, and I took the capstan lathe setting and operating. So it was like I tried to do the best I could with what I had even then.
Yes.
But there was always this lure of drinking drugs. Always, there was this problem that
Just
was always, it was always there. And I'd get out, and then you start getting involved with drugs, and then what you do, you go to the places that produce them because you're going to get them cheaper. You know what I mean? It's not about sort of becoming some sort of successful drug dealer living in, a large house with a swimming pool. It was about supporting a habit and getting close to the source. Mm-hmm. And, before that, it'd be antiques because they're high value, small items. So it was
a vicious circle.
A vicious circle. And it was, as soon as I stopped doing that, I didn't want to do anything that was antisocial afterwards. Mm-hmm. In that, what I mean? The worst I'd get up to is maybe, I can't even say I drove a car without an MOT. Ever since, I passed my test, I did all the things you're supposed to do. I've never been in trouble.
What was the having got into so much trouble? What was the trigger that got you out? Was it
I had a friend.
Writing, or?
I always had an interest. There was always some sort of interest in the arts. There was, how can I put it? I still collected books as well. Mm-hmm. I can remember, God forbid, this is crazy, but I'd drive shoplifters around sometimes. And I can remember I was in Exeter one day, and a friend of mine, he's called Bros, he's dead now. He said, right, what would you like? Is there anything you particularly like? And I've said, yeah, there's some books I want. And as payment for driving them round or whatever, he shoplifted these books that I wanted. I mean, this is crazy, but this is true.
Yeah.
So that it was like, it was real. This, some sort of anchor to something. Mm-hmm. If it's books or it's I'm not saying fantasy, but I just felt there had to be something else. It couldn't all be like this. Mm-hmm. And in the end, I just turned it around. Mm-hmm. Obviously with help and other people that are like-minded, supporting each other.
Yeah.
But, I was lucky to have that. And then it was performance poetry. What can you do with no money? I can write. I just need a pen and a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And then somebody gives you a word processor. And then you do an access course. Then you go to university. And then all this starts receding, but you don't really want to talk about it, so you fictionalize it.
Yeah.
And then it takes many years before you've rinsed it through. And there's a great deal of shame because you don't want to admit to this that you did these things. And there is that, why should anyone know? But you want to, in some ways, I don't know, purge it or what? I don't know. It just sort of came out in the writing.
And has it come out in some ways almost... not comedy, but like a
certainly
dark, like sardonic smile on your face.
Well, it's not all darkness. No. Even in
some of it's amusing.
I can remember being in the back of a Black Maria where they used to have mesh down the middle, and there was like two wooden seats either side, and we're up for section 20. It sounds grandiose, but international drug smuggling, and we're being taken to court, and there's a Liverpudlian called Davy sitting facing me, and I've got my head in my hands, and he's looked at me and he had this really grating Liverpool accent. He's gone, Gerry. He said, Gerry, fucking pull yourself together. He said, it's a great feeling when you get out. You know what I mean? And we're facing between the solicitors saying to me, the family solicitor, well, Gerry, you look at between 6 and 8 years. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, what have I done? They're refusing bail because you've got contacts in Europe and on the Asian continent. And I'm thinking, I haven't even got the bus fare on me to get to the next market town. I'm standing there in a Dior suit. You know what I mean? I haven't got a pot to piss in. And it's like, what's happening? This is so crazy. And there's some local copper that remembered me from Oakhampton, from when I lived there years ago. And they're almost like treating you like you're a celebrity. Or are you one of the Eskimos? You've been done. And it's like, what have I got myself into? But if you couldn't see the humour in this, that's when, you know what I mean, I have a deep affection for Liverpudlians because, you know, for the darkest moments, when I think of some of my pals from Liverpool, they'd find humour in it. Whereas most of them from Devon, you know, they'd want to be swinging from the rafters, missing their clotted cream and cider. No, I'm being horrible now. That's not entirely true. I found that basically people that had come from hard backgrounds, you know what I mean, and Liverpool in the 80s had a right kicking with the, you know, politically, and a lot of these people I met, they weren't sort of evil people. You know, many of them, it was like a way to turn a penny. They earned that to earn a living. You know, on the other side of it, I remember working in factories in Oxford. I worked with Scotsmen that would come down, they'd go home once a month, and they'd come down and work night shifts at Oxford Exhausts. This was in 87, when you got Tebbit saying stupid things like, get on your bike. You know, these guys were travelling hundreds of miles to earn a few quid to support their families. You know what I mean? And that was at the beginning of 0-hour contracts. How anyone can vote for this government is beyond me. That's just sort of thinking about it historically. But
so you spent a number of years in prison.
That was a bit of a wake-up call. It was quite serious.
Yeah.
And I never got in trouble after that.
No.
Well, I think there was a drink driving. And I'd got mixed up with people that... I don't know. I mean, it's almost like divine intervention. I don't know. I mean, two people I was mixed up with. One of them hung himself after serving a life sentence for stabbing a jeweller to death. The other one was found dead in the toilet of an overdose. And he served numerous prison sentences. I was in court with them in, I think it was 89, and there was no evidence offered against me. So it was like they say your name and like step down. And I went to the Exeter Arts Centre with the solicitor. He was ex-flying squad and had a vegetarian meal, as I remember. But that was the last time I had any trouble. That was the last time. And I saw my pals, it just got darker and darker and worse, and death. It was serious stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it was murder and stuff like that. This wasn't like toe in the water, messing around. This was really serious.
Yeah.
And, you know, at some point, you know, your girlfriend's left you. You haven't even got the dog with you anymore. You know, I had an Alsatian called Nico. Fortunately, somebody took her off my hands. And it was just a realisation that, you know, and a dear friend of mine, he died. You know, it was an accumulation of events. After the seriousness of the drug offence, I still held on like a lunatic for 6 years. You know, registered on methadone, all that sort of carry on. You know, I wasn't a paragon of virtue. You know, this is why I felt that I was just so lucky. Things that happened, crazy things that happened. You know, I'd be driving along, I'm banned from driving, I'm over the limit, because every day was like that. You know, you'd start the day with high-strength lager, methadone. If you've got gear, you'd use that. And I can remember driving in a police car, the lights are flashing by, and I'm thinking, oh, no. And I've gone to pull in, and it's overtaken me and stopped the car in front of me. And things like this kept happening.
Yes.
And it was...
They were giving you chances.
It was weird. It was weird. And then, you know, nothing of any... It was all petty, low-level nonsense. You know, my goal every day was basically to get out of it. You know, but obviously to be able to function, to be able to do that. But I just had enough. You know, I mean, there's a saying, sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just had enough. I just thought there's got to be something better. And there were weird things like... There was a newspaper called the Sunday Correspondent, and I've seen a picture by Peter Howson, who was the war artist in Bosnia, if you remember, in 93, 92, 93. He was the official war artist, but he wasn't then. And there was this picture, it was called The Noble Dosser. And I sent him some of my poetry with a stamped addressed envelope. And he had an exhibition at Flowers East then, and he wrote back to me. I've still got the letter in the catalogue. He said, you know, what about doing something with your poetry and my paintings? You know what I mean? So it's little things like that. I thought, that's great. And then, of course, his experiences in Bosnia, he had a religious sort of epiphany or whatever. He found God. So, you know, I wrote to him, but I never heard from him again. But it was just that little intro, you know, even then in my madness. And I'd go up to poetry evenings. I was holding on to something. I didn't know what it was, but all I know, it was related to the written word and the beats and all the usual thing, you know, like the book Junkie by William Burroughs. You know, it's not romanticizing it, but you recognize things in there that are ageless. The setup guy, you know, where the guy's sitting in the bar waiting for that man to walk in and go, you know what, you're just the guy I need. And of course it never happens. You know what I mean? But I can remember being in a bedroom, asleep one afternoon, duvet diving, and a guy's come in. He said, do you want to earn, I think it was $2,500. Do you want to earn $2,500, Gerry? I need a case brought back from Amsterdam. This is God strike me down. It was 12 kilos of African bush. And I've gone, yeah, I'll do it. You know what I mean? So it did happen to me, and I got, you know, and I walked through with it. But the money did me no good because I had no plan. I was a lunatic. It just went. And I've just walked through, I've just risked my neck coming through Heathrow on a Monday night. I can remember it, KLM. I've come in, and the carousel next to me was El Al, and they had armed police and dogs, and I've got a case with the baggage allowance of African bush, which if you've ever smelt it, I swear to God, and that's how I, you know, and it was like, yeah, I'm through. You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was like, you know, it was like a film that no one would want to see. It was just nonsense.
But I mean, all these experiences, are they slowly
I just thank
being filtered?
God I'm here.
Are they being filtered into your writing now? Obviously, that it has had an influence, or is it a time?
Yeah, it has, because I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I can't believe some of it. I cannot believe how stupid I was. You know, because I had the intelligence to realise this is, you know, if they stop you, then you might get away with it, but you're gonna get at least 3 years straight away.
Yeah.
The people that surround you, your girlfriend, she's not even going to send you in any tobacco. You're on your own totally. You've got nothing. You know, I remember a pal of mine, we're still in contact now, he's a doctor in Chicago. And he said, you know, you can't get away from the fact, if you've got a big support network, if you've got money behind you, you've got more of a chance of turning it round because you've got that support network.
Yeah.
And I know that to be true. You know, when you're on your own, it is hard. You know, you've got to have this, like, which I had, I believe, a blind faith that it will get better. I'd look at other people and I'd think, they've done it, I can do this. You know, I'd just keep going. I mean, now it's got to be the hardest point in some ways because you've done all this, you've got these books behind you, and it's like, I don't know what doors to bang on anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, what do? You just keep going.
Yeah.
And, you know, it will be what it will be.
So with your books, you've got,
yes.
I did have a look online and saw that you're in foils.
Richard's,
Okay.
he's got distribution
Tangent,
Tangent Books. He's got distribution. But Louise went into, I can remember it, there's a tea store, it's all gone now, part of the development of Hackney and the Olympics. But we went into Central Books. Louise went in with a laptop, and we knew that they'd say, have you got any other books in the pipeline? And we made up some nonsense. One of them was Recipes for Disaster and Poems for Pets, right? These books never happened, right? It was to show them that. So she showed them Lubin Tales and everything, and bought Bill, the guy at Central Books. He said, yeah, we'll do your distribution. So we were in with Central Books right from the word go.
Right.
And then after Smoke and Other Tales, we had other things up there, colouring books, all sorts. I took it all out because unless you're selling the stock, you're paying storage.
Right.
So I filled a Saab with loads of stuff, which is mostly colouring books. But we'd sold quite a lot of Lubin Tales and Smoke and Other Tales and Torquay Tornado. So then I'm without distribution, without a publisher, and then that's when Richard Jones at Tangent Books fits in. So yeah, it's in foils, which he's done well doing that from Bristol, because he is mostly Bristol centric.
Right.
And it's in the Arnold Feeney. And
where is the Arnolfini?
The Arnolfini is on Narrow Quay in Bristol. It's just opposite where they threw in the statue of Colston, and rightly so.
Absolutely. Yes.
And as for other sort of outlets, the truth of the matter is, I don't think there's many books left. Because it was a short print run. It's not a massive print run.
So in terms of people listening to this podcast and perhaps wanting to get their hands on
Tangent
a copy,
Books. Just go straight to Tangent Books.
Or can they buy it online through Amazon and... Yeah,
but don't go to them. No. Go to Tangent Books, and the postage is free. And they've also got a load of other good books there. Okay. I'm not,
And you have a website called Zero Lubin.
Well, it's a blog, really.
Okay.
But
people can find out about you via the...
Yeah, just go up on the Zero Lubin blog or Facebook.
And it's zerolubin.co.uk, isn't it? Or is it .com? I forget.
No, I can't even remember. It's a blog. It's a blog. It's Zero Lubin blog.
So this is actually your next venture, is it?
I want to do, but I've got to come up with a title for the podcast. And at the moment, it's sort of working out what order to put the writing up in a way that people can engage with it, and it's not like department weird. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I can put it in compartments, like characters, and then experiences, and maybe even decades.
Okay.
But
well, that's something to look out for in the future.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about quite a lot about London, and I loved our walk from Liverpool Street to your house here.
But that's just 2 blocks that we covered.
And look how
do you
much
see how much it's changed?
Yes.
You know what I mean? We didn't even do Brick Lane when you get to the mosque, which used to be the synagogue, which used to be the Protestant church. You know what I mean? It's just...
Yes. It's layers of history.
It's layers. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
And where do you go in London when you want to go and just have a bit of peace and quiet?
The Barbican.
Do you?
I love the Barbican, and if I've got a few bob, I'll go in Waitrose. But I genuinely love the Barbican, and I don't know if they can even call it this now, but it used to be Mad Mondays. Mm-hmm. You could go to the cinema for like £6.50, £6.60. And it's a lovely experience as well. And I love everything about it. The architecture, even the fittings, all this, they're unique. Yeah, they're bespoke to the Barbican. I mean, if I suddenly had massive success, I definitely want to live in the Barbican. That's
your goal.
That's an aspiration.
An aspiration.
Yeah, that one, and the other one's living in Switzerland.
Okay. Yeah. Anywhere in particular?
Well, it'd have to be on the French border. It would have to be, I'd have to work it out, because it's a bit like, I think, living in Monaco. You're better off to live in France and commute in. But then if I had that much money, I don't think I'd worry about it.
You probably have
Louisa
a house in both places.
She said I'd be bored. She said I'd be bored, which I probably would be.
Yes.
But it's just that thing, isn't it? Driving around in a vintage Mercedes, an ivory-coloured steering wheel, that sort of, I don't even know if I'd get on with them.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
I know. But for now, the Barbican, I'm happy with the Barbican.
Small steps, isn't it?
And of course, I love going to Foyles.
What, the main one?
Charing Cross Road, yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, since it's changed.
Yeah, I mean,
you got used to its new look.
I've got a friend who works there, Patrick.
I think you took my book there to show him.
Yeah, he's a musician as well, and an illustrator. Mm. He's quite good, actually. I've got some works of art here of his.
Okay.
But, did they have it in there? They got it in there or not?
I don't know.
Did you have distribution?
No, because I'm self-published.
See, this was it. This was how we did it, through Central. Mm-hmm. That was the conduit. Yeah. That's what we found out.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get in, the days of sort of going in.
Yeah.
But saying that, I did it with, what's the record shop called over Brick Lane? Rough Trade. Woman's left now. I went in there, smoking other tales. She's gone, sale or return. I just used to invoice them. She'd pay me. Sold them. That's brilliant. In the London section. Got in touch with some woman over there now. Haven't heard a word from her. I can't be bothered. I really can't. Mm-hmm. It's their loss.
Totally.
It is. I mean, it's like Decca and the Beatles. It is really, or the Rolling Stones. It was like, smoking other tales. Waterstones Piccadilly They had 50 copies and they sold. And
That's
then I've
brilliant.
got, it was somebody staying here, an Italian woman. She said, Gerry, your books, are they upset? And I'm thinking she's exaggerating. And I've gone down there and they've got like 3 copies left. And I've seen the guy in the fiction department. I said, look, I'm quite happy to do a reading. And he was, yeah. Loads of enthusiasm, the usual. If I had £1 for every time I've had that. And then nothing happened. Probably because there was someone else that maybe sold 100 books. Do you know what I mean? So why would they have me? Even though it's a lot to me, it's not a big deal to them. And it would have been Waterstones at Charing Cross as well.
Mm-hmm. So where can people find you on social? You're on Instagram.
Oh, Instagram.
And is it again?
Gerry King the writer.
Gerry King the writer. Okay.
Gerry King the writer.
That's it. You have some very amusing comments.
Yeah.
I like your comments as well.
Yeah, that's the one really.
Okay.
Yeah, Instagram.
Okay.
I think that's the way forward.
So I think what we should do now is, if you'd like, to read a kind of 30-second excerpt from your book.
Well, this is a distraction. I don't know. It's going to be longer than 30 seconds, I think.
You go for it.
All right. This is distraction number 6. Outside, storm, Korea is raging by Whitechapel standards, and I'm watching Lost in Translation on Netflix. Even though it's early February, the buds are growing on the tree outside my kitchen window. I watch the tree flex and sway. I couldn't bear anything to happen to this tree. Trees are at a premium round here. There's a magpie nest on the top. I don't like their raspy chatter. I prefer the tweet and chirp of small flitting birds. A ginger tomcat with a big scarred head is always climbing the tree, trying to get at the magpies. The cat has no fear and will try and barge his way onto the landings when the main door is closed. I always say to him, all right, mate, but I've never stroked him. A friend of mine stayed at the flat last night. She practices hypnotherapy in Edinburgh and Glasgow and was in London attending a workshop in High Holborn. As a gift, she left me a book, Japanese Wisdom for a Perfectly Imperfect World. I'm always wary of counsellor types, anyone on a mission really. I was a bastard. And then I found Jesus. An element of, I drive a car, therefore I'm a mechanic. When I consider some of my more balanced friends, I realise they've usually done some work on themselves. They've had counselling or therapy. My excuse is purely lack of finances. I don't know what I'm frightened of losing, apart from the money, of course.
That's brilliant.
But that's
Very
that.
Good. Excellent. Thank you, Gerry. Well,
okay.
I think you've spent a lot of time chatting and it's been just wonderful.
No, it's been great.
Hear a bit more about your life, and thank you for sharing so much with us. And is there anything else that you'd like to add as a final farewell to the podcast for today anyway?
No, I think it's great that you're doing this, and in some ways the spirit of the bookshop lives on.
It does.
I've really enjoyed it. So if anyone wants to get in touch, if they're interested in the books, if they want, just get me through Instagram, Gerry King the writer, or gerardking@gmail.com, all one word. So that's it really. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you, Gerry.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you very much.
And to all you podcast listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it and been inspired. I certainly have. Please do share if you have enjoyed it. Subscribe if you can to the Travelling Through podcast. There'll be another podcast next week, so watch out for that. But for now, take care and thanks for listening.